It is genuinely difficult to fully comprehend the sheer scale of the devastation unfolding. This morning, at dawn, the landscape was transformed into a complete ashscape, where the once affluent and serene neighborhood of Pacific Palisades stood. The devastation began the night before, with multiple wildfires raging uncontrollably, exacerbated by hurricane-force winds. The fire in Pacific Palisades has now reached catastrophic levels, becoming the most destructive wildfire in the city's history. Amidst the chaos, power has been cut off, yet the night remains eerily bright due to the raging fire, casting an orange glow over the tinder-dry hills surrounding Los Angeles, which are in the midst of a severe drought. As people evacuate, the situation has become dire, with mandatory evacuations in place. The scene is apocalyptic, flames rise over homes, and the smoke and ash cloud the air, making it nearly impossible to breathe. It's astonishing that so many were able to escape without being burned alive. Pacific Palisades, once home to luxurious coastal properties, is now a charred wasteland. The fires raged through the night, showing no sign of stopping. A line of fire now stretches along the Santa Monica Mountains, one of the most iconic areas of Los Angeles, with homes and businesses caught in the fire's path. One local firefighter, Dan, expressed that this is the worst fire he has ever witnessed, far surpassing anything he has seen in LA's history. The fire is so fierce that even items such as mailboxes, which once marked an address, now survive as random remnants amid the destruction. Children's toys are left abandoned in a rush to flee, and along the street, some appear to have hastily packed their household items into cars, only to be forced to abandon them in their frantic escape from the inferno. Fire crews have been tirelessly working for 3 consecutive days and nights, trying to contain the flames and save as many lives as possible. Their focus is on evacuating residents to safety first, while saving properties and structures comes second. Ensuring that no lives are lost has been their top priority, and fortunately, many people have made it out of harm's way. But as the crews continue to fight, over 1,000 buildings have already been lost in this small coastal community, and more homes continue to be reduced to ashes. On this street alone, much of the area has already been destroyed, while some houses are still standing, untouched by the flames. Yet fire crews are doing all they can to protect the remaining structures, moving from house to house, trying to salvage whatever they can, but the odds are slim. The resources available are spread thin, and with the unpredictable nature of the fire, only a handful of houses are being saved. For days, nature has held the upper hand, as strong winds whip through the area, fueling the fire. Los Angeles is no stranger to the Santa Ana winds, which have been intensifying, pushing the flames farther and faster. These winds are reaching near hurricane force, creating a random and cruel pattern of destruction as the wind shifts direction constantly. One family's home may remain unscathed, while their neighbor's house is engulfed in flames. People have come to expect the fire to move like a wall, destroying everything in its path, but this fire is different. It's unpredictable and chaotic, leaving behind an almost surreal pattern of devastation. The once tranquil and wealthy neighborhood has been reduced to a chaotic, burning battlefield, as the community waits in fear, hoping for relief that might never come. The random nature of this disaster has left many in disbelief, and it remains unclear when or if the fire will be contained. It's quite a bit more chaotic than anything we've seen before, and it is extremely difficult to predict the direction this will take. The unpredictable nature of these events has made it nearly impossible to contain the fires. We are always one step behind, trying to catch up with the fires that are moving rapidly, and the situation keeps escalating. This morning, the landscape that used to be Pacific Palisades is now nothing but ashes. The scale of the destruction is almost impossible to comprehend, and the images are hard to assimilate. What once was a serene, affluent neighborhood is now gone, reduced to charred remains. The irony of it all is that the only structures still standing are chimneys and fireplaces. Those are the only remnants left behind from this catastrophic fire disaster. The devastation stretches for block after block in an area that was home to 30,000 people. What was once a picturesque part of Southern California, with its famous beachside community, is now a desolate and burnt-out place. The sound of running water in this drought-parched landscape comes from burst pipes, not from nature. It's like a hurricane, except instead of rain, we are dealing with an unprecedented wildfire. It's as if the fire has transformed this familiar environment into something completely unrecognizable. This is not an isolated event. Many of us are wondering if we've ever seen anything like this before, and the consensus seems to be that we haven't. This fire, in its magnitude and ferocity, is likely the worst brush fire Los Angeles has ever experienced. Dave Walters, a veteran firefighter who fought the flames for 3 days, said that he was only able to save one house on an entire street. It's a grim reality for firefighters, as they struggle to manage the fire with limited resources. The water in the hydrant simply wasn't enough to contain the flames. In fact, the only reason they were able to save the one house was because it had a pool, and they were able to draw water from there. The fire raged on, consuming everything in its path. Even the Corpus Christi church was completely destroyed, leaving only a skeletal frame standing. This catastrophic event serves as a stark reminder of the climate crisis we're facing. Experts across the board, meteorologists, police, fire departments, and academics, are all pointing to climate change as a key factor in making this disaster far worse. The lack of rainfall, prolonged droughts, and rising summer temperatures have created the perfect conditions for fires to spread uncontrollably. Normally, when the winter winds, like the Santa Ana winds, come through, they blow over damp ground. But this time, the winds have been blowing over dry, tinder-dry terrain, which has allowed the fire to spread at an unprecedented rate. Fortunately, there is a bit of hope on the horizon. The Santa Ana winds are expected to moderate today, giving firefighters a much-needed window of opportunity to get control of the fire. Reinforcements are on their way, with fire crews coming from all over the state, as well as from Oregon and Arizona. Some smaller fires are already under control, but the risk remains high as the dry conditions continue. The terrain is so dry and drought-stricken that the potential for new fires igniting is very real. Until the rains finally come, it seems like the fires could keep spreading. Alex Thompson, reporting live from Pacific Palisades, describes the scene in stark terms. In a video call before going on air, he spoke to Malibu resident and film director John Turtle, who has worked on movies like Cool Runnings, National Treasure, and The Meg. John shared his experience of being in the area. "Right now, I'm standing on Malibu Beach," he explained. "I'm going to show you the street where I live. These are basically the only 4 houses that haven't burned down on Malibu Beach, and that's not an exaggeration. Every house from here to New has burned down. Even the restaurant has been destroyed. It's a heartbreaking reality that the fire has devastated an entire community, leaving very little behind." As Malibu residents like John Turtle try to make sense of the chaos, it's clear that the toll of these wildfires will be felt for a long time. The devastating wildfire in Malibu was managed with what could be called Malibu style, as communities banded together to save what they could. Despite our efforts, the question remains: is my house still standing, or has it been reduced to nothing but ashes? Thankfully, my house is still intact, but only because of the relentless efforts of my neighbors, who worked around the clock, literally 36 hours straight, to ensure that it did not burn down. However, we are far from being out of danger. As you can see, fire crews are still present, constantly battling small flare-ups, dealing with smoldering embers that reignite the fire as the winds shift. The situation remains tense, and although it's incredibly loud here, I'll try to show you just how devastating the destruction is all around us. The speed at which the fire spread was shocking. Houses were gone within hours, probably 3 or 4 hours, and in that brief window, around 100 homes were completely destroyed. Now, the real question is, if my house survives this fire, what will it be like to live in this neighborhood again? The possibility of a neighborhood as we once knew it is almost gone. Even if my house remains, the surrounding area will be unrecognizable. The street might be left with just 4 houses standing in an otherwise empty, desolate area for miles around. I'm not even sure if we would stay if we saved the house, as the community has been shattered. For me, as someone in the movie business and a storyteller, it's surreal to be experiencing this level of destruction firsthand. In Hollywood, we craft stories about disasters and catastrophes, but living through one is far worse than any fictional narrative we could ever create. What we are witnessing right now is beyond anything any of us could have imagined. It is much worse than we thought it would be. People may see reports of the fires on TV or in the news, but I can assure you that the scale of the disaster here is not fully grasped. The country, the state, and even the world may not realize just how severe the situation truly is. LA will eventually recover, but this will require an immense amount of time, effort, and money, more than anyone can truly comprehend. The scope of the loss is staggering. Entire neighborhoods have been wiped out. The people who once called these houses home were longtime residents, and their lives have been uprooted in a matter of hours. Malibu Beach, once famous for its high-end properties and world-renowned beach houses, no longer exists. It's a scene of complete devastation. The once picturesque neighborhood is now 100% gone. Every single house in this area has been destroyed. Looking ahead, the political climate surrounding this crisis is concerning. In less than 10 days, we will have a new president, someone who has publicly expressed skepticism about climate change. What message does this fire, this disaster, send to him? It's a significant question. As for me, I don't think it's about whether or not we will have a president. The important point is the urgency of the situation. People are hesitant to speak out against this issue because of the president-elect's stance. He has already made it clear that if people voice negative opinions or concerns, they won't receive support or aid. This climate disaster, the one we're living through right now, sends a clear message: the effects of climate change are real and devastating, and ignoring them will only result in more devastation in the future. Help, that's crazy. That's what has happened here. So, is climate change the reason? I don't know, probably, but I don't know. I can sort of sense that there's a little feeling of, oh, a bunch of rich people lost their houses. Yes. I don't know if they are rich anymore, but this is an icon of Los Angeles in California, and not here, Pacific Palisades. And it's still moving, it's still going. People need help. John, thank you very much indeed. Well, I'm joined now by John Valiant, journalist and author of the Bailey Gifford Prize-winning non-fiction work Fire Weather, an account of the 2016 inferno that engulfed the oil town of Fort McMurray in Canada, and an examination of our future in a more flammable world. He joins me now from Orange County, which is just south of Los Angeles. John, thanks for coming on the program. I mean, I'm sure you heard the accounts just now, these very personal and searing accounts of absolute shock when you see your own home, the place you lived in for many years, burned down by the flames. But at the same time, this kind of devastation, albeit to varying degrees, happens every year, doesn't it? Matt, what's shocking to me and what is really painful to see and hear is the incredulity and surprise of these people, the firefighters and the survivors alike. They describe something as if it was the first time it happened. And it's true, it is the first time it happened to them. But the same thing happened to thousands of people in Valparaiso, Chile, this spring. It happened to thousands of people in Lahaina, Hawaii, a couple of years ago, in Paradise, California, just up the highway from Los Angeles. It happened in Fort McMurray, Alberta, in the subarctic of Canada in 2016. The damage in those places was just as bad, and fires moved just as quickly. Unfortunately, this kind of destruction is not new. It's just new to them. For those of us who've been lucky enough not to have had this experience in our lives, and you have had it, what is it like? Can you describe what it feels like to face the whims of these flames? It's really like being in a blast furnace. You know, each region is different climatically, but global warming has supercharged the atmosphere and heated the landscape to the point that fire can move across it with unprecedented ferocity and speed. That is the defining indicator, the marker, of what I call 21st century fire. It's the speed of the flames. And we saw that in shocking technicolor, if you will, over the past couple of days in Los Angeles County. But this same devastating phenomenon has occurred in Paradise, California, Lahaina, Hawaii, and Fort McMurray, Alberta. I could continue. The list of places impacted is long and tragic, and it gets longer every year. Now, of course, the political blame game seems inevitable. Many people are pointing fingers, saying Donald Trump, as he prepares to move into the White House, is a climate change denier or skeptic, and worse outcomes are likely under his administration. Meanwhile, Trump has pointed the finger right back at California and Governor Gavin Newsom, accusing them of not being prepared for this type of fire. Who's right? The cynicism of weaponizing and politicizing a global problem is, frankly, criminal. Enormous harm will result from this, enormous damage that will further divide the country. And it is also, frankly, unpresidential, though he's not the president yet, to speak this way when a state like California, the fifth largest economy in the world, is in crisis. People have been killed, and this type of nation-dividing rhetoric is not what we need right now. No benefit to it, and even the parties, even the winning parties, will not benefit from it in the end because we are looking at pictures now of Los Angeles in a terrible state. I mean, is there anything that the state authorities in California could have done or should have done that they didn't do to prevent this? So, there is, where all of us are living in a kind of a certain amount of psychological fantasy, and that is the status quo of our normal lives. Despite the fact that California is a famously flammable state, the residents of Los Angeles County, who live in steep, flammable hillsides, imagine that they might somehow magically be impervious to this. It's a fire-prone landscape. The Los Angeles Fire Department is massive and experienced. The water system and the hydrant system are actually excellent, but when you're driving that much water uphill with pumps, that's when you start to lose pressure. This happened in Fort McMurray too. That's another wealthy city with good infrastructure. You cannot blame it just on the infrastructure. But finally, John, is your message to our viewers and to people who read your books that actually this is the new normal? This should not be seen as a kind of searing exception, this is the new normal. As long as governments, financiers, and banks who enable them stay loyal to the petroleum industry, this is going to repeat itself over and over again in more and more extreme forms. The message here is an international one, and that is to decarbonize. That can be a peaceful mission, and it can be a uniting mission. And that's the message from nature to all of us. Well, let's see if it's received by the people who matter. John Valiant, thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Matt. Good to be with you. Now, with Los Angeles still under a red flag alert and new fires having to be dealt with, the impact on the ability of local people to insure their homes is also under the spotlight. Experts have warned that the cost of the claims from the fires in the past couple of days could push the California insurance industry to the brink of collapse, and the crisis isn't over yet. Here's Cam Zarin. So much for the Golden State. From the Pacific Coast Highway to Malibu, wildfires continue to ravage America's wealthiest state. Inland Altadena near the Eaton fire is the same. We have 0% containment. We have over 879 firefighting personnel assigned. Wildfires, fanned by climate breakdown, are making large parts of some of America's most desirable zip codes uninsurable. Some of the country's largest commercial insurance providers are pulling out of fire zones like Palisades. California's insurer of last resort is called FAIR, which is now the only option for thousands of homeowners and businesses. FAIR says it has nearly $37 billion in exposure across Southern California alone. Industry analysts fear losses from these fires will be between $6 and $13 billion. But last summer, FAIR acknowledged they only have about $385 million in reserves to pay for claims. To cover that huge gap, the cost of insurance for everyone will inevitably go up. And it's not just wildfires, insured losses from natural disasters across the USA are skyrocketing. From 2009 to 2016, losses generally stayed well under $60 billion a year, but from 2017 to 2023, it's only dropped below $60 billion once. 2025, what used to be some of LA's most expensive homes, what a start to the year. What happened there? I don't think there's anything I've ever seen quite like it. The insurance companies are going to have a big problem because you're talking about big dollars. But could it become Trump's problem? His motto, drill, baby, drill. A California Senate Budget Committee report published only last month was titled, The Climate-Driven Insurance Crisis. The crisis is here and getting worse. Remember the financial crisis of 2008? The report warns it could happen again, urging huge reductions in carbon pollution. The impact of climate breakdown is increasingly being felt by the wealthy as well as the poor, from hurricane-prone Palm Beach in the east, which happens to be mega central, to liberal California on the west. We woke up in the morning, and our house, which is near the beach, just smelled of smoke, said geopolitics analyst Sean West, who had to evacuate his Santa Monica home. Do you think the fires in California might have any impact on the president's energy and, more importantly, climate change policies? I think the president's energy and climate change policies are pretty well fixed. He campaigned on being very pro-drilling, very pro-fossil fuels, very ESG. I don't think this environmental catastrophe, any more than the hurricanes that we experience, and things like that, even if the frequency of these events is increasing, we can acknowledge that it's happening more frequently. But I think the political views on it are fixed. Meanwhile, fires and hurricanes mean more and more wealthy Americans, not just in California but in Republican Texas and Florida too, are finding their premiums spiraling out of reach. People with influence, people who vote.